Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Krista Ryan with Corner Chiropractic and Laser Clinic, as well as Miss Dr. Mom. And I'm going to be chatting today about some of the things that I've touched on in my podcast. So if you guys haven't seen the podcast, you can look me up on Facebook or on Twitter under Miss Dr. Mom, and you'll be able to catch previous episodes. And I'm chatting a little bit about something that happened to me when I was young. I used to live on a farm and I had about 50 horses, and oftentimes I'd go out into the field and I would be doing chores in the field. So I'd be feeding the horses or watering them, doing different things like that. And one day I was walking out into the field and I was just looking at what was around me. So I was looking at the beautiful sunset and the rolling hills, and I was looking at the water being reflected, like the beautiful picture that was being reflected in the water because it was so still. And I was just looking at the trees and the woods. It was gorgeous, and I wasn't really paying attention to the horses that I was walking through. And I had just fed the horses, so they are all eating. And oftentimes, if you just let a horse know that you're around, they pay attention to you and they don't hurt you, and you're pretty good to go. But I wasn't paying attention, and unfortunately the horse wasn't paying attention at this point. So I ended up tapping one of the horses on the butt, and it scared the living daylights out of her. So she jumped up from eating and just like took off. And before she took off though, she kicked me in the leg, and I yelled, and that's why she took off too. But it scared me as well as her. And my first reaction, her first reaction was to take off out of there. My first reaction was, I'm going to kick her back. So I ran like crazy after her, and I got a few steps away, and I realized, okay, I actually, she hurt me, and my intent to go after her was to actually kick her back. But I realized at that point, one, there's no way I was going to kick her back. And two, she's way too fast even if I wanted to. But when I was sitting in class, actually, we were talking about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic system. Parasympathetic system is our rest and digest nervous system, and our body is wired when we're resting and digesting to have certain things happen. So we need to secrete stomach acid, we need to break our food down. So our body really focuses on the digest portion and doesn't focus on being defensive or having our nerves really on high alert. And yet this other system, which is a sympathetic system, is our fight and flight. So we want to run after the horse because she just scared the bejeebus out of me, and the horse is taking off in a fight system. So we both had a big sympathetic reaction. Now, a lot of people today, we're shift workers, we are overstressed, we have things in our lives that get out of control, and we get into something called sympathetic overdrive. And this is when our sympathetic system, it's just like on high gear all the time. And we're revving up for something, but we never get the end result because we're not running away from anything anymore. And there's no outlet or release. And so our sympathetic overdrive is high when we're at work and are in our stress environment, or if we don't get enough sleep because the kids were up all night. And so we need to bring that balance back into our lives, and we need to do it in specific, manageable ways. And if you haven't caught my podcast episodes, I talk a little bit about what I learned in chiropractic college when we had a lot of courses, and some of the courses, there's a certain amount of chiropractic philosophy that you get in chiropractic college, obviously. And the philosophy talks about how toxins, trauma, getting hurt, breaking a bone, or thoughts can actually contribute to the way our nervous system reacts, and it can get our bones out of place, and it can cause disease or dis-ease in our body. And so when I learned about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, I realized that we need to help our nervous system, and there's many ways to actually help our nervous system so we're not always in this parasympathetic or our fight and flight response. It doesn't kick up or kick into gear because circumstances in our lives happen. Now, sometimes how you respond to stress really matters. So if the stress is a negative stress, it can cause massive problems, or if we perceive it as a negative. Because sometimes it's just our perception of things that can cause massive stress in our body, such as, like one day you'll go to work and everything's good, and the next day somebody sat in your chair wrong and or they moved the chair out of the normal position, and you get you get upset and angry and you get into that fight mode. And we do that often, and our environment is giving us stimulus, like stimulus after stimulus after stimulus, including like Facebook. So, or any TV watching that we're doing, we're actually in a sympathetic response because we feel sorry for the guy on TV and he's going to die if he doesn't just like look around the corner. So we get into this fight and flight response like I got into with a horse, and it was a change of state like that. It took me like a second to get into that state. And we do that daily. Like somebody says something, we get into a parasympathetic overdrive. And we get into that fight and flight state. Somebody, if I lived in a bigger city, I'd actually be in that that sympathetic overdrive all the time, that fight and flight, because I would be a very angry person with all the drivers around my city. So we get into these small triggers, but there's tools to actually help, kick us out of them. And a lot of times we need to strategize, and a lot of times it's really fundamental that we learn these things because of our working environment. And, it's more important for people that have like work overtime to actually really learn to strategize these things. And I have a lot of people in my area that work shift work, and they're constantly changing when they're sleeping. And when you do that to your body all the time, it's actually a form of stress because you're flipping from your rest and digest to your fight and flight, to your rest and digest, to your fight and flight on a continual basis. And your body doesn't get into a rhythm of, okay, I'm going to rest at this time. And it can, over years of doing this, it can really mess with how we perceive the world and how we react to our environment. If we're not in that fight and flight response, we actually act really rational. We think things through. We have the time to do it. But as you could tell with my story, I took off after a horse that was way faster than me in order to kick her. So not something that a rational person would do. So we need to strategize, and there's fantastic ways to do that out there. And in the next few episodes, I'm actually going to be chatting with some of the things that I use to strategize in order to help with my rest and digest response, in order to live better, longer, healthier. And I want to bring that to you guys too, because it's so, so crucial and very, very, very important. And I'm going to do that in a number of ways. And one of the things, again, I'm talking about a previous episode about how, thoughts, traumas, and toxin cause disease. Well, I'm just going to be going back there and saying, okay, if you're in a fight and flight response all the time, what can you do in your body physically to totally change and erase stress? And then what can you do mentally to actually repattern and reprogram your mind so that you're not stressed all the time? And what can we eat on a daily basis in order to decrease that stress response in our body? So stay tuned. I got lots of stuff coming for you. And I got a lot of fun things, and we're going to have a great time going through this. So I hope you're having a wonderful day. And I know this episode was short and sweet. If you've missed my podcast, please, please, please go and check them out. We are on Apple iTunes, and we are on Stitcher for people that have Android phones. So look up Miss Dr. Mom, and I will be posting this to YouTube. So I hope to see you guys in my next episodes. Please comment, please share and like. It really does help, and it helps give everybody a fantastic learning experience. And you can have profound learning lessons like I did through my life. And I'm going to be sharing with you some of things that have been successful for me and things that have been successful in my practice. So I hope you're having a great day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.